Welcome to What's Your Story, a place where ordinary people share their amazing life journey. I'm your host, SHERITA Williams, and today my guest is Christina Stanton from New York City. Today, our story will educate, empower, and encourage you. Please help me welcome Christina Stanton to the show. Christina, welcome.
Hi, everybody. Thank you.
Christina, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am from Tallahassee, Florida, and I moved to New York City when I was 23 years old, and I've been there ever since. I met my husband there, and we live in the financial district, and we've been married 20 years as of this past March, so we were celebrating our 20th anniversary. And my husband actually is the church administrator for our church, and I've run their missions department for the last 10 years. And I've branched out into writing, and I write a lot of articles, and I've written 2 books.
So the financial district, I know that's near the World Trade Center.
Yes.
And I'm going to just take you back. I hope it's not too painful, but I want to take you back to the year of 2001. That was when we had the major horrific test of 9/11.
Yes.
Tell me, where were you during 9/11 in 2001?
So September the 11th, 2001, my husband and I were in our apartment, which was the 24th floor of a building that was only 6 blocks away from the complex. Ironically, we had only moved there, had been living there for 2 months. We had really just gotten married, and our things were still in boxes, and we were still basically kind of preparing for our married life. We just got married, just moved into this beautiful apartment, and the apartment had a 300 square foot terrace that overlooked the World Trade Center complex. And I felt like I was on top of the world, had the husband of my dreams, was ready to start my life, my married life, and everything that awaited us as a married couple. So that morning, I was asleep. My husband was awake. He ran and shook me awake and said that a bomb had gone off in the World Trade Center. I got up from the bed. We ran onto our terrace, and we were watching the flames leap out of the first tower that had been hit. And then all of a sudden, right over my right-hand shoulder, the second plane came. It went by us. It went right in front of us. It turned. The wings turned about 8 o'clock and 2 o'clock, went right in the building. And we were so close to that plane that it actually knocked us back into our apartment and knocked us out. And it burst my eardrum. I actually haven't been able to hear from my right ear ever since. And I woke up, my husband was saying, grab your shoes, we got to get out of here. And I just remember running to the lobby floor of our 24th floor apartment. And by the way, my husband has done the math of how close that second plane was to us. And he's realized that we were 500 feet below it. So we were so close, and so close to those buildings in general. Anyway, ran down the 24 flights. And as soon as I got outside and my husband and my dog followed behind me, I realized, whoa, I'm in my pajamas. I have no shoes on. I need to collect myself and go back and get dressed and start this all over again, whatever this is. But even in that amount of time, the building wouldn't let us in. They were only allowing people out, not allowing people in. So we walked over to Battery Park, which was a nearby park, hoping that we would be safe in that park. But it turns out we weren't safe at all. When the Twin Towers came down, they covered us with dust and debris, and we breathed in that dust, and we were completely yellow. Again, me in my pajamas, no shoes. We were actually evacuated by boat to New Jersey. And the long and short of it is, we actually didn't get back into our apartment until the next January. We were kind of what I call the American versions of refugees. What a lot of people don't know is that when the Twin Towers came down, they registered on the Richter scale as an earthquake. And so it took some time to look at all those buildings to see if they were structurally sound and could support people. And that's why it took so long to get us back into our apartment.
So Christina, do you think you experienced PTSD?
Oh, absolutely. It was just such a horrifying experience that honestly kept going on and on and on. When we were evacuated to New Jersey and we ended up couch surfing for months afterwards, trying to get back into our apartment. Our dog almost died because our dog ingested that dust, which covered him. You know how an animal is, they lick themselves when they're dirty. So
Yeah.
our dog had licked that dust, which was filled with ground up glass, which ended up shredding his insides. So he was clinging to life. My husband, who graduated from Clemson University, had a fraternity brother who died. We went to his memorial service. It just kind of went on and on. We went to live with my mother in Florida for a while since we were homeless. And we were definitely suffering. So even when we got back into our apartment, both of us weren't able to work. We had to go through a lot of therapy.
Well, I'm sure you did. Like a lot of people that I know that experienced that. Tell me, what did you learn from the experience? And before you tell me that, I heard you said your husband went to Clemson. I am also, I'm also a Clemson Tiger. So
Can I say this? Because I'm so proud of my husband. One way he remembers the 9/11 experience is his fraternity brother who died. My husband's the director of a scholarship in the fraternity brother's name at Clemson. And next weekend, and it's in the form of a golf tournament that's done annually at Clemson. And next weekend is the big fundraiser. And he does that every year. And I'm proud of him. He spends the entire year on it. And so next weekend is the big weekend for the Jim White golf tournament at Clemson.
Okay,
Yeah.
so go ahead and give our listening audience the website again.
Oh, I actually am not sure the website, but it's definitely on Facebook. It's the Jim White Memorial Golf Tournament. So yeah, it's raised over $250,000, and it's scholarships for incoming freshmen.
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
So after all this horrific thing that happened in 2001, tell us, what did you learn from this experience?
At the time I was 31, my husband was 35. We had just gotten married. I was in my prime. I was wanting to make my mark on the world, wanting to be successful. And I had a bucket list of items of things that I wanted to achieve that I thought would make me happy. But in the moment that we thought we were going to die, and we did absolutely believe that we were about to die, none of that mattered. I felt so alone and small and scared. I was very glad that my husband was with me. A lot of people were facing those terrible moments without their loved ones with them, but I had my husband. But even with my husband, I was filled with such dread about what I was about to face after I died. And I just hadn't spent my life thinking about that. I hadn't explored what that would mean. I just felt young and that seemed death seemed very far away. So it just was a profoundly sad and lonely feeling that I had a hard time coping with. My whole worldview was rocked, and I had such a hard time coping in the aftermath.
I'm sure you did. So here we go. 19 years later, we're in the year of 2020. Again, New York is hit with a pandemic. The whole world is hit with a pandemic. But New York just happened to be the epicenter, the global epicenter, because of the impact that was so horrific in New York. So were you affected by COVID-19?
Yes, actually, my husband and I got the virus. We contracted the virus pretty much right off the bat. When I say right off the bat, it was right when New York City was realizing, it's a thing. It's about to get real here, right? And so around the 13th, 14th, 15th, around that time is when we believed we contracted it. And we had a very bad case of it. I was actually hospitalized twice. And the second time I was hospitalized, a doctor told me that I had a 50-50 chance of not surviving the COVID battle. And, that was, it was the fight for my life, honestly.
I'm sure it was. And, we hear on the television, we hear controversial things, that the pandemic is soon going to be over. And then we're up to over 200,000 people who have died. We've got hospitals that are impacted, have nowhere for people to stay. And I'm sure that you've lost some loved ones. Tell our audience, what did you and your husband learn from being affected by this pandemic of COVID-19?
Well, especially in those early weeks of March, so little was known about it. So little. There was so much confusion and fear, and there still is. But back then, it was especially just such a crazy, unknown, and scary time. I tell you, there's some easy things that I learned that I can easily cite off the top of my head, which is one of them is the power of prayer. At that time when there was really nothing to treat it, nothing worked on me. And all I could do was I did a mass email and asked people to pray for me, because that's what, when the chips are down, that's all that's left. But at the time, it's all you need, right? I felt those prayers. I really felt that people were petitioning God for my life. And I really, I can't tell you how much that comforted me in that truly scary, traumatizing time. Also, turning off the noise of social media and the news, and it ended up becoming very important to me, mainly because I noticed a direct correlation. When I looked at social media and looked at the news feeds and watched the news, I'd feel worse. I'd physically get worse. And so I had to kind of shut down and isolate, and it was really just me and God. And that being said, it was a whole different experience than 9/11. I mean, I had to admit, I'm a terrible wimp when it comes to physical pain. I don't like it. I don't deal with physical pain very well. And to tell you, I was in an excruciating amount of pain for my viral battle. It was the most painful thing I've ever endured in my life. But at the same time, and I was alone at the hospital. Relatives can't visit you. But I really felt that God was with me. I didn't feel alone at all. Completely different from the 9/11 experience. When I was with my beloved husband, I was not alone. I was surrounded by people in the park. But I felt profoundly sad and scared and alone. I was definitely alone in an unknown hospital that I'd never been before. But yet, at this time, almost 20 years later, and my relationship with God had grown, I definitely did not feel alone and felt very reassured that the Holy Spirit was with me. It was a whole different experience.
I'm sure. And I thank God for his healing power in you and your husband's life. And I thank God that we have a Christian network broadcast like WYTV7.org that can educate, empower, and encourage people, that they don't have to listen to the rhetoric that's out here on different social media. So I thank God for the broadcast. And we're going to take a short break. And I just want to remind our listeners, each week you make these amazing stories possible by donating to WYTV7.org. Please continue to give to WYTVC.org so that we can educate, encourage, and change someone's life. We'll be back shortly after this message.
Mr. Happy Living here. I love good things made by good people. That's why I love ZonaPLUS, the world's first software-controlled handheld device that improves cardiovascular health. You're going to love it too. I use mine almost every day to keep my blood pressure right where it should be. What surprised me though is this little device has been adding muscle to my biceps too. I walk around all day feeling pumped. Check them out at Zona.com. Use coupon code HAPPY for $50 off. Plus, for every order placed during the month of October, I'll donate another $50 to WYTV7.
We're back with What's Your Story? Today, my guest is Christina Stanton. She is an author. She's a 9/11 and COVID-19 survivor. She owns a nonprofit, and she is an amazing woman. She's going to continue sharing with us her story. And if you want to be a guest on our show, you can contact me, SHERITA Williams, at 154@gmail.com, or you can go to the website. That's WYTV7.org. Please help me welcome Christina back to the show. Christina?
Hi.
So I see that you founded a nonprofit. Tell us a little bit about that and the name of your nonprofit.
Well, I think I told you that I ran our missions department at my church for 10 years. And whenever I would bring teams of teammates around the world and show them what Christ is doing around the world, but also different poverty that we would be we would see and be and experience. A lot of people come back to the United States and they wanted to help, which was wonderful. But a lot of these nonprofits doing wonderful work around the world didn't have let's say a USA-based nonprofit, so people could get a tax receipt when they donated. And I hated that loss of people being able to help just because they couldn't receive a tax donation. So that is one of the original reasons why I started my nonprofit, which is called lovingallnations.org. But it has grown since then, and it's on its 4th year now. And we help people literally all over the world. And I'm very happy to say that we've helped a lot of people in this time of COVID, because there are so many countries that are really, really struggling with food insecurity. I mean, a lot of people are out of work and they can't even eat. A lot of them aren't even worried about catching COVID. They're worried about where they're going to eat next, or what they're going to eat next, or if they're going to eat next. So I'd like to say that the nonprofit has really done a lot of good in sending money to Christian organizations internationally, that in turn gives it to the neediest in their communities.
So how can we support you? How can we contact your nonprofit?
Well, again, it's lovingallnations.org, and there are different countries and different organizations to give money to, and the designation would be COVID. If that's something that you want to help out with. And again, it goes straight to Christian organization who knows their community, who knows who's really starving, who knows who's being underrepresented, who knows is not getting any help. And then they in turn will help people. Another thing too is I've written some books, and when I wrote the books, I had no intention of keeping any proceeds from the book. I really did write these books, in part because I really felt God wanted me to write them. But I felt very convicted that any proceeds would go towards my nonprofit and goes to hurting people around the world.
So Christina, since you brought it up, we know that you're an author of 2 award-winning books. Please tell us the name of your books.
Well, one I wrote was the first one that came out last year, which is called Out of the Shadow of 9/11. An inspiring tale of transformation and escape. And then another one that came out just a few weeks ago, which is called Faith in the Face of COVID-19, A Survivor's Tale. And they really are about what happened to my husband and I during 9/11 and during the COVID battle. And again, proceeds go to Loving All Nations.
Okay, so tell us how we can purchase those books.
They're on Amazon. They're on actually quite a few different websites. I think they're both on Barnes and Nobles, like wherever you prefer to buy books. They're there online. But for sure, in a pinch, they're both on Amazon.
Okay, that's fantastic. So your 9/11 book, please share just a little bit, just a glimmer of what we can expect in your 9/11 book. So, some of the horrific things that you experience. Even you told us earlier that you didn't even have your shoes on. Can you just share with our audience a little about that?
Well, when I evacuated our building without any shoes and in my pajamas, I was when my husband and I had been knocked out in our apartment by the plane. Basically, I was so out of it. My brain just wasn't functioning, and it actually took about a day for it to, I feel like, kind of kick back in. But for that day, on the day of the attacks, I was really not myself, and I was not thinking clearly and was not reasoning well. So when we went to Battery Park, and I was again shoeless in my pajamas, that we were covered with the dust and debris, and we were evacuated by boats. And I remember where a boat pulled up to try to take us off the island. It wasn't a docking or loading area. And there were 2 burly men who were helping to pitch people into the boat, right? And so, again, it wasn't a loading area. So I balanced myself on a railing that basically was a railing that kept people from falling into the Hudson. But I had to balance myself on the railing before they pitched me or lowered me into the boat. And I remember one of the guys said to the other guy, "Hey man, watch the lady's skirt," right? For one thing, I was wearing one of these pajamas that was kind of like a half dress. You know, you've seen these things. Mm-hmm. But I remember thinking, I was like, watch the lady's skirt? I'm not wearing a skirt. So am I wearing a skirt? You know, I was so out of it. Only later did I realize that man was being so sweet and trying to preserve my modesty and have my pajamas not ride up on my body as they lowered me into the boat. But I just didn't know what he was saying. Also, my husband went into the boat afterward, and he was holding our dog. I remember one of the guys said, "Hey man, does your dog bite?" And I remember thinking, why is he asking if Gabriel bites? What does he care if Gabriel bites? And what does that mean? And of course, they grabbed, and my husband said no. They grabbed the dog out of my husband's arms and pitched him into the boat. And of course, it took me about a day to realize, oh, they're asking, when we take this dog out of your arms, is it going to bite us because it's so scared? But again, it just, I was so confused. And again, part of it had been, I'd been knocked out and I really had a slight concussion. But the other part was, we were in such an alternative reality that I just didn't understand anything that was going on. It seems so surreal and crazy. And I talk about these kind of scenarios in my book.
That sounds fantastic. It sounds like you and your husband, y'all learn life lessons through near-death experience, 2 life lessons. The lightning doesn't even strike in 2 places rarely at the same time. And you guys went to 2 major life experience with 9/11 and COVID-19. Tell me, where do you see your future? How has this affected your faith in God? Because it was his mercy and grace that kept you and your husband. So tell us, how do you see yourself?
Well, let me back up a little bit. When I talk about 9/11 and then COVID, unfortunately, both of those events left my husband and I with lingering health issues. You might have heard that the toxins in the rubble of the Twin Towers were lethal, and they're connected to over 60 different cancers that thousands of people have contracted after in the aftermath, right? So our health has suffered in the years since, and ever since getting COVID, my body absolutely has not been the same. I'm called a long haul survivor. I'm still suffering many health effects from being COVID positive and my viral battle. But as much as I would wish those health issues away, I just really feel like when it's time, God is going to take us. And one thing that for sure I've learned is how little control we have over our, what the circumstances of 9/11 and tragedies. And we're basically told in the Bible that we're going to be going through hardship. And I know for the rest of my life, I'll be walking with the Lord, because that I do have control over. I have control over how much I turn to God. I have control over how deep our relationship is, because that's just spending time with God and prioritizing God over everything. And also gratitude for what God has brought me through. I feel completely grateful for all of the hardship, because I'm at 51. I just turned 51. I'm still here. My mother's birthday is today. We're about to take her out to dinner. She's still with us. My husband's still well. And there's a lot to be grateful for. And both situations really taught me how much we need each other. We rely on each other, and we really are brothers and sisters. I mean, I gotta understand, when we were battling the virus, we weren't getting deliveries. Deliveries were backed up by weeks. We couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't go anywhere for 2 months. I was not just quarantining. I couldn't move. What would I have done if church members hadn't come and dropped off food and dropped off things that they got at CVS for me? We're better together. We need each other, even in this day and age of complete individuality and independence. And I'm going to get it delivered. You know what? And we need each other. We need to watch out for each other by wearing masks. We need to watch out for each other and take care of each other. And my husband and I were totally taken care of during our COVID fight. And we just couldn't have done it alone. And especially couldn't have done it without the power of prayer. Literally, I had hundreds of people praying for us around the world. So,
there's nothing like the power of prayer and being in God's hand and his comfort, because he will meet all of our needs if we put him first. And we have to remember that, and our faith tells us and helps us to, as we grow in faith, we grow in our relationship with God, and he just wants us to trust him. That's the most important thing, just trusting him.
Yes.
Christina, it has been a pleasure with you.
Thank you for having me on.
What's your story? And I would like to thank our sponsor, ZonaPLUS and Happy Living. And also I would like to thank our audience and WYTV7 Christian Broadcasters Network. And if you would like to be a guest on our show, please contact me at SHERITA154@gmail.com or give a donation to WYTV7.org. Until we meet next week, I say be safe, wash your hands, keep your social distance, wear your mask. I'm Sherita Williams, and I'm checking out. Have a good evening.